Don't wait for the headlines. Do this instead. In this video, I'm going to break down exactly why when it comes to investing, making big decisions, especially with your money, why you shouldn't react to the news and you shouldn't wait for headlines and you shouldn't wait for this to happen or wait for the election. In this video, I'm going to break down what to do instead. So remember, this is according to my own research. I write about this every week in my free newsletter. Please do check that out. The link to that will be in the description. Most people, make decisions based on headlines. They react, and typically when something's in the news, the move has already happened. When it's known to the public, it's out there already. The headline comes after they act. So a company reports bad earnings, or a macro number disappoints, or a central bank surprises. The reaction in the short term, if you go, or if you zoom really in, yes, it's going to be, volatile, right? But the problem is everyone's reacting to exactly the same news. You want to be thinking, how can I generate my own alpha? How can I do my own thing? And typically when you've read something, which is baked into words that are on a headline, everyone's got access to it. Loads of viewers are watching it, and you've got no real edge. You need to be able to look at something and interpret it to yourself, because by the time you've read it, the move's already priced in. Public information is priced in almost instantly. Acting on a headline is not edge. It is joining the crowd after the move has already happened. So typically you're usually late because the move's already happened. Headlines change constantly. I've talked about this in other videos. There's a new headline every week. The war has broke out. Fear. The war's over. Something else happens. People, if you're trying to keep up with the news, it's almost like you're chasing something which you're never going to catch, right? There's new headlines all the time. People have, small memories, and people, get caught up into the news too much when, in my opinion, you need to avoid the news entirely when it comes to big decisions. Yes, it will play a factor. Yes, sometimes you'll really want to make a good decision based on something, but ultimately you do need to avoid it. So, and emotional decisions follow headlines, as I mentioned there. So fear and greed is driven by what's in the news. You really need to detach from that as much as you can. Whereas charts, what we talk on this channel, they don't care about the news at all. So look, price leads narrative. Price moves, sets up the news, right? So by the time a headline explains why something moved, the chart is already showing it. A good example is the AI bubble. And I've put Ferrari there and BlackBerry as well, but being very recent, the AI bubble. Nvidia goes on a 3-year run, we're in an AI bubble. Yes, people probably recorded AI bubbles for about a year now and they would have been wrong, but that's a good example. Ferrari was bearish before its EV car, release. If you look at it, the electric car, Ferrari was down for weeks, it was bearish, but then people, talking about a 6% stock decline in a day on Ferrari. Well, it's been down for weeks because you just need to have that zoom out. So typically, the headlines do not cause the move. Journalists and analysts explain what has already happened using the news as a reason, but the selling or the buying was already underway. Price created essentially the narrative. BlackBerry, a good example. BlackBerry was bearish for ages when Apple was already the number one phone, and then the narrative is created because of that. Because of usually weeks. These moves really do take time to happen. The problem with reacting to the news is, you cannot react faster than an algo. You cannot react faster than the person writing the news. If there's going to be a press release in an hour, people already know. We saw this with oil trades that were being made by certain people, right? We saw these options or futures positions were put on. You cannot react faster than these people. By the time it's spread, it's reached millions of people. The edge is gone and you're late. And the narrative changes before you can position around. So what the news says today may be completely different tomorrow, next week, and a year. The good news, in a downtrend is a trap. Typically, maybe a bounce to sell into. If price is already showing weakness and a positive headline comes out, but price fades anytime or any way the price is telling you, or the chart, is telling you something far worse important than the headline is. The chart wins every time. So the chart is always what you want to be leaning into. Bad news in an uptrend can be an opportunity. It could be a dip to buy. You've got to always think of these things, but ultimately detaching yourself from the news because it's secondary information. You want to be creating primary information. So what I'd like to do instead, ignore the news as an action for a trigger. Yes, it might play a factor. If you have 0% interest rates like they do in COVID, okay, cool. I might risk a bit more, yes, but I'm still going to follow what my plan is. I'm not going to try and deviate from that because of the news. as I mentioned, big moves take weeks or months to play out. AI bubble, macro shift, a sector rotation, they don't happen overnight, they happen over weeks. So you don't need to be keeping up with the markets, really every single day. You can do it on a weekly basis, right? Like, these things do take time. If the chart confirms the news, I pay attention, right? So a bad headline in a stock that is already breaking down, that's worth noting. And typically, if a stock or a company is dropping loads and no one cares, that to me would indicate no one really cares about this company in the long term. When Microsoft dropped, dropping, you could say, people care. When Bitcoin drops, people care. That shows to me people care about the brands, the products, and it's probably here to stay around because people care when a massive drop happens. When a drop happens in a stock, or I guess a better example is a meme coin, and no one's talking about it, okay, cool. It's probably not going to come back. So that's more of a thing that I like to think of, and what I maybe pay attention to is there headlines about it? Doesn't matter what the headline's saying. Are people posting about this certain thing? Okay, cool. I might want to pay attention. And the news cycle is constant. The moves, the moves that matter, are not, right? So there will always be a new headline, right? So you just can't get in the habit of chasing it, right? So take it, like I mentioned with the brand thing, I think it's a really good frame to have. Take it, evolve it, adapt it, and go from there. So look, prior to these narrative, the chart tells the story before the headline confirms it. Reacting to the news is not an edge. Joining the crowd after the move, that's what everyone does typically. If you can create something about if the Fed cuts rates, this is what I do. If they, or if they do whatever, you can create stuff around that. But typically, people, they're making these huge decisions after bullish earnings when it's gone down and just bounce to be sold into. So I don't react to the news. You shouldn't. I let the chart tell the story for me. And that's what we talk about on this channel, right? If you want to get a better understanding of my approach and just keep up with markets, you're busy individuals. If you want to keep up with markets from a chart perspective, sign up to my newsletter. Link to that will be in the description, and I'll see you in the next one.